This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Yeah, we just stay focused on our game. At the end of the day, if we do what we need to do and execute our game plan, that will give us the best success. Whatever team comes in, obviously we got to play with emotion, we got to play with their legs, we got to play Lightning hockey.
Got to play Lightning hockey.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a 60 minutes, but we shoot for it, don't we, partner?
Yeah, and I think Lightning hockey is the team is playing with pace. The team is playing as a five-man unit. I mean, there is a way that they want to play, and when they're playing, quote-unquote, Lightning hockey, we see it, right? They are I mean, every team wants to impose its will on the opposition, but certain teams do it differently. The Montreal Canadiens, for example, the Lightning's opponent tonight, can do it with speed. You know, speed can be an intimidating factor, just like physical play can be an intimidating factor. And the Lightning play with speed, but really when they are going, they have their forecheck game in gear. They are taking away time and space. They are playing with the puck a lot, and they're playing with pace. But more than that, and Gensel mentioned this after the game on Sunday, I think, against Nashville. He said, you know, we're playing as a five-man unit.
Right.
And when they are all in sync on the ice, every team is that way. Every team wants to play as a five-man unit, but when the Lightning are playing as a five-man unit, they are able to play with pace, and not unlike maybe Montreal or Buffalo, teams that can really skate and intimidate with their speed. That's Lightning hockey to me. They can also grind you down. I mean, you know, the Gord line plays a cycle game, but that fits into kind of what they want to accomplish too, because they have the puck, the other team doesn't. Right? You know,
it used to be, and it probably was Washington who most people were going to focus on, is the Lightning had trouble with heavier teams.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? And
it's going back a few years.
That's what I mean. It was more Washington related, but I mean, I don't know if you wanted to throw the Kings in there, but it was mainly Tom Wilson and company who could just thump you.
Well, do you think some of the Lightning's troubles with the Panthers the last 2 years were related to that? I mean, we heard a little bit of that with the physical play.
Yes.
Which is almost like towing the line, going over the line, not so much just being physical, which is, I think, what those Capitals teams were about, or the Capitals team in 2018 when the Lightning lost to them.
I'm trying to think, is there a team this year that you think has given the Lightning real problems? You mentioned speed. Everybody, I feel like, is fast today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's degrees of being quick and fast. I don't know if there's anything that pops outside of, there have just been traditional matchups that have been problems.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
like
buildings. They have trouble winning in Minnesota.
Right.
They do have trouble winning in St. Louis, although they played pretty well in St. Louis. They ended up losing in a shootout. I think it has less to do with the opponent. It does have something to do with the opponent, but it has less to do with the opponent when you hear what I'm about to say. When the Lightning were struggling at the start of the year and maybe coming out of the Olympic break, they had trouble playing well against any team. But the flip side of that is also true. When they were rolling, it didn't matter who they played. So I'm not sure that there has been a specific matchup in which kind of what the other team wants to do is some kind of unsolvable problem for the Lightning. It really has been tied to how are they playing at that particular moment in time. That's why I thought that game they had against Minnesota was so impressive, because I thought Minnesota's on a long road trip. They lost 6-3 in Boston after they lost to the Lightning. But I was impressed with the performance that Minnesota gave in that game at the beginning of the homestand. And the Lightning just flat out beat them. So not only did they beat them on the scoreboard, I thought that they actually outplayed them too after a tough start. So that's why I termed that as a very impressive win. But they faced other really good teams and teams that maybe have played well. And when the Lightning have been rolling, they have handled what those other teams have tried to do to them. They have had some rush coverage issues at points this year, and teams that can attack off the rush with speed when the Lightning are not dialed in have problems. But so does every team. There's a reason why Buffalo has 98 points. There's a reason why Montreal has 94 points. They can skate, and they can make the other team uncomfortable. And I'm using those two teams as an example because certainly in that 8-7 game in Buffalo, the Sabres did a lot of damage off the rush, and their speed hurt the Lightning. And it wasn't so much the first meeting between the Lightning and Canadiens, but it was the second one, the game in Tampa right after Christmas, where the Canadiens, they were just flying. And the Lightning ended up winning in a shootout. They blew a big lead in the third period, but the Canadiens outplayed the Lightning in that game. In that one game.
Right.
Why did they outplay them? They used their speed. They attacked off the rush.
And that's actually, I think, something we've discussed and you alluded to here. I think that's when the Lightning are at their best, when they're playing with that.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting the issues the Lightning and the problem the Lightning can be for a lot of teams. Hopefully, they will have their biggest offensive weapon in the lineup tonight. He is Nikita Kucherov, meaning going to be a game time decision, correct?
Yeah, he participated in what was an optional skate this morning. And I have to be honest, occasionally Kucherov will participate in an optional skate. But I think if you looked at the number of optional skates the Lightning have over the course of a season, Kucherov is involved in less than 50% of them. So usually he is not going out on the ice. Today he did. He missed the 2 games over the weekend. So maybe certainly he's feeling better if he's here at the arena and getting a workout in. So game time decision according to Coop. So he's definitely feeling better. The question is he going to be able to play tonight? And as he has missed 2 games over the weekend, Connor McDavid leapfrogged him in the scoring race, now 3 points up. And Nathan MacKinnon had, a couple of fairly productive games. Avalanche won 9-2 last night. MacKinnon had 3 points. So he and Kucherov, are they tied, or is MacKinnon 1 point back?
Let's take a look.
Yeah, I think they may be tied now.
Kuch is up 1 on MacKinnon.
Up 1. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they have the same number of games left. I think they both have 9 games left in the regular season.
How about Celebrini getting to the 100?
Yeah,
mark?
good for him.
Yeah,
so the
that's
Sharks
pretty
hit a speed bump, right? They lost, I think, 4 straight in regulation. I mentioned they had a big win in Columbus where they scored in the last 90 seconds to win that game in regulation. And now they've strung together a couple of wins in a row here. And this the Eastern race and the Western race around the cut line is crazy how crowded it is. So San Jose has now won 2 in a row. And the Sharks are 2 points behind Nashville for the final wild card spot with 2 teams in between them. But the Sharks have 2 games in hand on Nashville, and they have those 2 head-to-heads. We talked about Nashville's schedule. Colorado is at 73 games, just confirming that, and the Lightning are at 73. So both MacKinnon and Kucherov have 9 games left. Unless something weird happens, MacKinnon will finish the regular season with more games played than Kucherov, though, because Kucherov has missed more time than MacKinnon. MacKinnon's played 5 more games than Kucherov.
And the points per game is what separates Kuch.
Right, but they're not going to look at that.
They should.
That will not play a role in the Ross Trophy, the Art Ross Trophy for the scoring title, and it probably will not play a role in Hart Trophy voting, fairly or unfairly.
1.81 Kuch points per game. McDavid at 1.68. MacKinnon at 1.67.
Yeah.
So that just gives you an
Look,
idea.
they've all had great years.
Yeah.
They have.
Here's the thing about that, and we can get into the game tonight. If McDavid, certainly the scoring title is pretty self-explanatory. Like the MVP, I'd be hard-pressed to give it to McDavid if he didn't get into the playoffs, right?
Right.
I think, me personally, when I look at McDavid, I don't, even if they get into the playoffs, I'm not sure he gets the MVP. And I don't know how much chatter there is about that. I just, that's more of the eye test than a feel. I feel like Kucherov has been more impactful to his team and has had just as good a year offensively. Comparable. That I think I'd give it to the guy who maybe his team leaned on more.
So the other part of this is, and I'm not sure that this is any more fair than what we talked about with the points per game.
Yeah.
McKinnon's dominant part of the season came in the first half. He's had a good second half.
Right.
But he was so far ahead of everyone, like 2 months in. I can actually go back and I think I can go back and look potentially to see what the race looked like, let's say at the end of November. Maybe Steve, if you're able to do that. Look at the race. Where was McDavid relative to McKinnon 2 months into the season? We know Colorado only had 2 regulation losses at the halfway point. So Colorado has not been as dominant in the second half, and McKinnon has been good, like he is in terms of producing points, but his better half came in the first half. Kucherov, it's the opposite. Kucherov's better half has come in the second half. We talked about, really bleeding into approaching the first half of the season, the end of the first half of the season. But Kucherov had a quiet first month. So Kucherov has been noisier later in the year. McKinnon was noisier at the beginning of the year. That may work against McKinnon. Should it? He helped Colorado jump out to this enormous lead where they really haven't had to sweat missing the playoffs, certainly. Dallas is close enough that, there's still some doubt as to whether they'll get first, but should that work against? It's for the season, right? Like McKinnon was extremely valuable in all of the points that he produced in the first half of the season, helping Colorado only lose 2 games in regulation. Kucherov had this incredible second half bleeding into whatever we want to say, from game 30, let's say, game 25. Should that matter more? I don't know. And McDavid kind of got super hot maybe in the middle, where he caught up to McKinnon, and then as the Oilers kind of dipped a little bit coming out of the Olympic break, and they just haven't had as good of a season. Kucherov ended up catching McDavid, too. Now, of course, he's 3 points back because McDavid's put together a couple of productive games.
Steve had, through December 7th.
Thank you, Steve.
McKinnon had 49 points, Celebrini 43, McDavid 42, Bedard 40, and Kuch was at 34.
Yeah, so McKinnon was ahead in early December. So that's 2 months in.
Yep.
And ahead by, we'll just say a significant amount. As I say that, though, McKinnon's at 120 points. So he has had, 71 points since then.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say that he's slowed down. It's just maybe that McDavid and Kucherov have been, scoring at a higher rate.
Pretty incredible clip.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I think, you talk about the recency bias. Recency bias is in the last week or 2 weeks, but kind of the middle part of the season into the end of the season, Kucherov has been, getting more attention.
He's been dominant.
Than McKinnon for good reason. Yeah. He's setting these like point stretch marks. Sounds like a pregnant woman stretch marks. But you know what I mean? Like a stretch of time where he's setting like X number of points in X number of games is like hasn't been done in 30 years. This is like groundbreaking stuff. So he's gotten a lot of attention for that, whereas McKinnon hasn't, because McKinnon did a lot of his point gathering in the first couple of months of the season.
Celebrini, by the way, had 3 points last night, 2 goals.
Yeah.
And assists.
So you were mentioning the Sharks. The Sharks had a win.
Yep.
They're there. Like it is going to come down to like which team is going to. Can one of these teams go on a little bit of a run? Because I think Utah is in good shape. I think this race in the West is all about wild card 2. Maybe with the exception of a Pacific team that could slip down and fall out of the top 3. But looking at wild card 1 right now, Utah has a 5-point lead on Nashville. So that's not like locked in, but if they can take care of enough business, right, you would think that they're not going to get past. They would have to get passed by 2 teams to fall out of the playoffs. So I think Utah is pretty well set. Utah actually has the same number of points as Vegas.
Interesting.
So, yeah, Vegas got a win under Tortorella in his debut last night. They were playing the worst team in the NHL, but a win is a win. They were desperate for points.
Sure.
They got the job done. I just think that this is going to be a crazy race for that second wild card in the West. In the East is even more nutso. Like when you look at how condensed the standings are, and these teams in the Metro behind Carolina are not secure. Big win for Pittsburgh last night, head-to-head against the Islanders, and they were down 2-0 and 3-1, and they just erupted.
You talk about teams who you don't play against, typically the Islanders. I mean, this goes back to the 70s when, Pittsburgh had that 2-0 lead in a best of 5, I think, and the Islanders came back and won 3 in a row. I mean, that goes all the way back.
Even 93, where the Penguins were so heavily favored.
It doesn't matter how talented Pittsburgh has been. The Islanders have always been a thorn in the side. Lightning will take a chance and see Pittsburgh on Thursday. But the interesting thing about that Metro is that just when you start to say, I can see that team falling off, Pittsburgh, by the way, being one of those teams, they come away with like a win that keeps them back in that conversation. Things could have gone off the rails after Dallas got smoked by Carolina, and you're thinking, all right, look at the schedule. Here come the Islanders. And they nobody saw, putting up 8 goals.
Sorokin gave up 7.
But you don't think,
but I'm bringing this up about, Sorokin should win the Vezina. I mean, we're hearing some of this, and I'm like, Vasilevsky's numbers are better than Sorokin's numbers. All right, we're going to go look it up right now. I mean, this is after Sorokin just ate a 7-goal against game in 40-some-odd minutes. I mean, he got pulled. He didn't even play the whole game. Vasi's had a couple of these games, too. Yeah. Remember the Buffalo game where he got pulled, where it was 5-0. Let's look at the goalie stats. All right. Vasilevsky and Sorokin. Vasilevsky, 35 wins. Sorokin, 28. Vasilevsky, 2.33 goals against. Sorokin, 2.58 goals against. Vasilevsky, .913 save percentage. Sorokin, .910 save percentage. In those main categories, wins, goals against, and save percentage, Vasilevsky is better than Sorokin.
Yep.
So I'm not quite sure why. There are people who are like, Sorokin's going to win the Vezina. And I'm like, really? He's going to be a finalist, but if he wins the Vezina, Vasilevsky will have been robbed. I mean, I'm just going to, unless something weird happens in these last few games of the regular season. This isn't about most valuable player. Well, nobody thought the Islanders would get into the playoffs. And, the Lightning are a better defensive team, too, than the Islanders. I'll give you those numbers. As a team, the Lightning are 3rd in team defense, behind only Colorado and Dallas. Okay, the Islanders are 4th. But the difference is 2.75 versus 2.83.
Yeah.
We're not talking 2.75 and 2.77. The Lightning have been a better defensive team than the Islanders. Vasilevsky has better numbers than Sorokin. To me, that's a fairly direct line to the winner of this award. But that's one the GMs vote on. So if Vasi doesn't win, we're going to have some GMs out there who are just big Ilya Sorokin fans, I guess.
I don't know what to make of it other than...
You've heard that too, haven't you? Sorokin for Vezina?
I've heard more about the Celebrini for MVP than I have Sorokin winning the Vezina. I've
heard some of the Sorokin winning.
Yeah, it's there. And look, I'm willing to give the guy a little bit of grace. You have a bad game, it happens. Vasi's had them too.
Right.
So the fact that the Islanders are playing where they are, he's a big part of that, and so is Schaefer.
And he played very well in those 3 games against the Lightning, where the Lightning struggled to score.
Well, that was that was kind of I got a little. I don't care that much, but I heard a lot. Well, that's why the Islanders, they couldn't get by Sorokin. And I felt like Sorokin played well. I didn't think he was the Berlin Wall by any stretch.
The Lightning, that was when the Lightning were, that was that stretch in December, the 2-6-1. The 3 games they played against the Islanders, the third game might have been after the 2-6-1. Maybe not. I'd have to go back and look. But they played the Islanders 3 times in a very short period of time. And Sorokin's performances, because he played in all 3, and the Islanders' performances, they deserve credit for defending well, but all 3 of those games happened during this time frame where the Lightning hit a rut offensively. And not just against them, against other teams too. That's what happens when you play a team. They played three
Yeah.
times in like a week and a half or something like that.
Look, he's the Islanders are a good team, for sure, and they've got their warts. Sorokin's been a good player for them.
They could miss the
Good
playoffs
goaltender.
though too, Greg.
They could. I mean, honestly,
this is tight enough that they are not in the clear at all.
Steve just confirmed they were all in that stretch.
The Lightning lost 2 and they lost 1 in the shootout.
So, I mean, we get into these debates about MVP, and I do think it's just a matter of how you see things and your opinions, but we're making such a fuss over Celebrini, and for good reason. Should Schaefer get votes too? For what he's doing on the back end?
Schaefer's going to win the Calder.
Well, okay,
For
so,
sure.
to me, that's low-hanging fruit, yes. I mean, he's been, as an 18-year-old, right? That's a great but I mean, okay, so let's extend that out further. He's how old? Now, look, at a position that we would say potentially is harder to grasp, he's a plus 18, and he's given them a dynamic player on the back end. What's the one thing you and I have discussed about the Islanders not having a dynamic player? Just so happens to be, it looks like it's on the back end. So for everybody that wants to elevate Celebrini, and look, for good reason, yes, I mean, take him out of the lineup, that's a different team.
Yeah.
Schaefer, it's okay to, I would give him some love.
Schaefer very well may get votes for the Hart.
I would give him love. I'm not saying I'm going to give it to him.
I don't think he's going to get a bunch of first-place votes.
No.
But...
And in my top 3, I'm not sure I'd even have him. But, if we want to have conversations in terms of, most impactful to your team, 18-year-old defenseman who comes up is a plus 18 at a position that's really hard to grasp, and he's making an impact. And if the Islanders make the playoffs, okay. That's a pretty good year. So it is what it is. I think it's going to come down to 3 or 4 players in the Hart Trophy. So we'll deal with that when it comes, but just kind of keeping things in perspective. But you're right about the Metro in that I think that's more of a revolving door. Now, the game tonight, the Canadiens have been playing well. We've talked about how good they have been offensively. We've talked about some of the dynamic young players that they have, and for good reason. So for me, coming into this game for the Lightning, while it's a tremendous opportunity for Montreal and a good test for them, I think a good test for the Lightning, this should grab your attention. So you could say Nashville going through the doldrums, it's a West team and West Coast team, not West Coast team, but out West, and it's a team that we're not seeing. And yeah, they have something to play for, but okay. Montreal should grab your attention. It's
I think it will.
Game.
Yeah.
I mean, you should be ready to go. If for any other reason, there's a chance these teams meet the playoffs, right? I mean,
yes.
Okay, let's look at this. I'm not saying it happens, but this is a really good test. I would anticipate the Lightning maybe having some juice to start this game, unlike what we've seen earlier.
Well, I mean, we had John Cooper's quote following the Nashville game, the compilation of the last 5 first periods. Yeah. So I think he would like to see a much better first period.
Elite.
Yeah. So you might be like, all right, how is Montreal doing it? This was a playoff team last year. So, they made the playoffs as the second wild card. They gave, I would say, Washington a good series, even though they lost in the first round. Some of the games were close. I think one of the games went to overtime that they lost. They were up in game 4, having won game 3. The series was 2-1, and the Caps rallied on them. Sometimes when you're new to the dance in the playoffs, and many of these Canadiens players last year were new to the dance. Not all of them. I mean, the Suzukis and the Caulfields and the Josh Andersons and those guys did play in the 2021 Cup final against the Lightning. But a lot of their group last year, it was kind of their first experience. So they lost the series. But now you're like, okay, we lost that series. Let's come back and improve upon it this year. And they have done that. So the Lightning are second in offense. The Canadiens are third. So you're like, all right, how is Montreal doing it? They are still not great shakes defensively for the year. But when you get to game 73, 74, 75, and the numbers, let's just say their defensive numbers are higher than what you would like, it does beg the question, was some of this happening earlier in the year? Where they've had a good year, but they've played exceptionally well in the second half of the year. And have they improved in that regard? And just we're seeing the average for the whole year. I don't have the answer to that. What I can tell you, though, is that Jakub Dobeš, who was, when the Lightning saw the Canadiens in December, it's kind of like, whose net is it? Is it Dobeš's net? Is it Montembeault? They called up Jacob Fowler, remember the Florida-born player who played against the Lightning in the game in Tampa. It's Dobeš's net. He has played, Montembeault is third, really, on this depth chart. Fowler plays some. Dobeš plays the most. Dobeš is expected to start tonight. So maybe the fact that they've settled on him tells you something about where they are defensively. I'm actually going to look and give you Dobeš's numbers for the year. His win-loss record is very impressive. So Dobeš is 25, 8, and 4 with a 2.78 goals against average and a save percentage of .900. So his goals against is actually higher than Fowler's, and his save percentage is comparable, but he's played the most and he's won a lot, okay? But he has given them, let's just say, adequate goaltending.
Yeah.
And he helped them beat Carolina because they were outshot basically 2-1 in that game on Sunday and won 3-1. But to me, the Montreal Canadiens, they have three pillars standing up this tripod, okay? Or forming this tripod. You got Nick Suzuki, who's having a career year in points. You've got Cole Caulfield, who's got 46 goals. And you got Lane Hudson, who's one of the top scoring defensemen in the NHL. There are other players on this team, too, that have helped. Slavkovsky's having a career year, and he often plays on the top line with Suzuki and Caulfield. They seem to be playing together as a line right now.
He had a great Olympics, too, didn't he?
He had a great Olympics, yeah. And Oliver Kapanen had a good Olympics, too. He's a younger guy, and he's basically their second-line center. But really, you have three game breakers on this Montreal team, and two of them play together all the time and have tremendous chemistry, talking about the two forwards. And the three of them play together on the power play.
Yeah.
Not coincidentally, Montreal's power play is fourth in the NHL. So they can score, and they have weapons. The Greg Linnelli theory of, like, if you're going to win in the playoffs, you need to have guys who can make a play. They have guys who can make a play. They are big game, big-time players, too. Caulfield scores a lot of goals in overtime, scores a lot of big goals, and just look at the Olympics. Suzuki scored maybe the biggest goal for Canada prior to the gold medal game, which they lost, where they needed a goal. They needed another goal. But he had a deflection against Czechia. After Czechia, Palat scored. Czechia went up 3-2 in the third period. Canada needed a goal to get that game to overtime. Who scored it? Suzuki. So they are an impressive team, and they're well coached. Marty's done a great job with them, Marty St. Louis, and it took them a few years. They had to kind of build things up a little bit, but, you know, Caulfield gained some maturity. They added Hudson. They drafted him, but I mean, you know, he turned pro. He's had 2 terrific years in a row for Montreal from the blue line. So they are kind of a team to me that they play with speed. They play with speed up and down their lineup, but it's really their top end guys that do a lot of the moving and shaking for them. It's not to say they can't win other ways. I think they kind of, you know, did it defending against Carolina, honestly. If you're outshot 2-1, we know that can happen in Carolina, and you win the game. That means you're defending and you're getting a goaltending performance. But at the same time, their 3 goals, who scored the 3 goals? Caulfield had 2, Suzuki had 1.
Yep.
There you go.
Dynamic. They are dynamic.
Yeah.
They got some players. So this is going to be, you know, you talk about.
They lost Carrier, by the way, in the last game. He's injured.
Yeah.
So it sounded like they dressed 7D with Jack-Eye, who had that big fight with Sabrin, if you remember, in the game right after Christmas.
I do remember that.
And knocked Sabrin
out a while, right?
Down into La La Land, and Sabrin missed some time. But Jack-Eye, I think they're going to go to 12-6 tonight with the Carrier injury, and Jack-Eye will be not the 7th defenseman, it'll be the 6th defenseman, and they'll have to add in a forward who didn't play in the last game.
The 2 best.
I think it's actually Anderson. Anderson missed the last game. I think Anderson's going to play tonight.
The 2, and he's. I feel like had, I don't want to say a resurgence, but I feel like every time we've seen Anderson playing with Montreal, he looks closer to the player we saw in Columbus. You know, where he was just a big physical guy. I think sometimes injuries have taken a toll on his body, but I think he's always been somebody who a lot of other teams like. He's
and
big,
you mentioned
nasty.
they re-added, because they added him once, they've added him again, Danault.
I like
Who's
him.
a really good defensive center. His scoring has really dried up in the last few years. We talked about that when he was on his last stretch of time with LA before they traded him. But he will help Montreal. Good on faceoffs, penalty killer.
I mean, he already has 5 more goals than he had with the Kings, which was 0.
Yeah.
So I mean, and there is a component of his game where he can provide some offense, but he can be a pain in the butt to play against.
He was on their team in 2021 when the Lightning saw them in the final.
Yes. Two best players in Lightning history, but two of the best wingers, certainly in Lightning history, maybe of all time, will be potentially in the same building, right? Marty and Cooch.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about that dynamic and
they briefly overlapped. Briefly.
Yeah, good point.
Cooch's first year pro and in the NHL was Marty's last year with the Lightning. And Marty was traded, at the deadline.
Has he ever talked about Cooch?
Well, I think he speaks about him with admiration. Yeah.
Well,
but he had Marty spent more time playing with Palat and Johnson that year when they were rookies, and they were both Calder finalists. They lost to McKinnon, but they were 2 and 3 in the voting. Kucherov came up in November and stayed up, but we've talked about this. He only played in 2 of the 4 playoff games. Lightning lost to Montreal that year in the playoffs, and by then Marty had been traded to New York, so they overlapped briefly. But I mean, Marty St. Louis, even before he became coach of the Montreal Canadiens, was following the game and certainly knows what Kucherov is all about.
Matheson's
I mean, you think about it, Steven Stamkos is 2 great facilitators during his time with the Lightning. You had Marty, and then you had Cooch.
Look, I speak for themselves. Marty St. Louis is going to go down as, one of the best to ever do it, for sure.
Hall of Famer.
Do you put him in the same class as a playmaker with Kucherov?
I don't.
That's not
Marty did things. No, Marty just did things differently.
He did.
Marty played whatever Marty was listed at, 5'8".
So 5'7".
5', something like that. I mean, he played with the heart of somebody 6'8".
No doubt.
And was able to do a lot of things. I mean, he had such quickness to his game for most of his career. I mean, at the very end, as they say, Father Time is undefeated, right? But, really, I mean, not just in his prime, even toward the end of his time playing in the NHL, he was so smart and so quick and so hungry and played with such tenacity in addition to having great skill. But I'm not sure that, we've talked about Kucherov. There are very few players who have ever played the game who can do what Kucherov can do.
I mean, Chief has put him on the same kind of wavelength.
Him Marty or him Cooch?
Cooch with Gretzky in terms of how they see the ice.
Yeah, I agree with
that's I've always said this too. I mean, when you start being in that conversation with Gretzky, you're doing something, and it could only be for one thing. But if you're in that conversation for that one thing, you're doing things that are pretty special, because that doesn't happen a lot. But I don't know. Good. It's going to be a fun game tonight. I think the atmosphere will be fun. I think the opponent Tampa Bay is playing is going to be fun, and there's something to play for in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if this game gets chippy. Either. So I think from that perspective, it'll be good. Do you want to get to some questions, or is there anything else we need to add?
just a couple of notes. Yeah. Coop actually mentioned this in passing when he met with the media this morning. So just 2 things to keep in mind. The Lightning have 9 games left. Of those 9 games, 7 are within the Atlantic Division. Now, I mean, they're playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is in the mix, to try and get into the playoffs too, which is kind of my other note, which is, okay, Detroit is right now on the outside looking in, but they are in the mix. The only team the Lightning are seeing in the final 9 that is not either in the top 8 or close to the top 8 is New York, the Rangers, game 82. So they are going to be seeing teams with a lot at stake down the stretch. A lot of divisional games, in other words, they're not seeing a team that's, other than the Rangers, it's basically been eliminated already.
It's a good point to keep an eye on here.
Yeah.
Let's get to some questions. Colin says, curious to know your thoughts about why Peltier wasn't caught up in Kuch's absence. Left winger who leads the AHL in scoring versus Sabrin, who I love, but he ain't a goal scorer.
Well, it's hard to argue with the results. The Lightning won both games in which Kucherov was sick. They had available forwards to come in, and they put 2 of them in on Saturday because Nick Paul was sick too. By the way, it looks like Sabrin's in again tonight. I don't know if he's going to ask for a rematch with Jack-Eye, but it does seem like Santini and Bjorkstrand are out. So in the Saturday game against Ottawa, Santini was the 7th defenseman, but he only had a couple of shifts. He played just barely over a minute. So really the Lightning went 11-6.
What do you make of Bjorkstrand?
His minutes are down. He's not even on the top power play. Occasionally he shows up on the top unit, but he's not a regular member of that unit. They've really been going with Hagel. This is without Kucherov, too. But last weekend, we saw Hagel on the unit. We saw Gonsalves on the unit. We didn't see a lot of Bjorkstrand. He played a little bit, but with Kucherov, prior to Kucherov being out due to illness, in the games leading up to last weekend, when the Lightning had a power play, sometimes we saw Bjorkstrand, but, often we saw Hagel on the first unit.
I'm stating
and
the
then
obvious.
5-on-5, he's playing on the 4th line. Bjorkstrand,
I'm stating the obvious. This is incredibly disappointing for Bjorkstrand and for the team. And this does set up a situation where you could see he's a healthy scratch in the playoffs. Because for them to make this decision late in the year, you want to be getting guys going because you look at him and say, that guy probably could help us. But now this decision, to your point, with maybe some guys in and out of the lineup, you would think, hey, we're going to give you some opportunities. Let's get going. This tells me, this is my spidey sense, which could be wrong, that ice time has been limited, more so than we've seen. The production hasn't been there. 11 total goals, most of those coming on the power play. That the coaching staff potentially is preparing that Bjorkstrand might not be in the lineup when the playoffs start. Doesn't mean he won't see action. I want to be very clear on that. But depending on what their lineup looks like, that is like, hey, you want to know why this makes the Lightning a great organization? It's not only going out and getting a Bjorkstrand because of his credentials. It's also making the tough decision like, hey, if it's not working right now, then maybe we have to look at what is to give our team the best chance at winning.
Sure.
It doesn't mean he won't have an impact at some point, but that just tells me the coaching staff, the organization is looking at like, all right, it's not working right now. So we've got to figure this out.
And this is just based on who was out late.
Correct.
For an optional skate.
Yes.
So we won't know for sure.
Maybe,
yeah. We'll find out for sure tonight.
Maybe he's in the lineup and he scores 3 goals. Wouldn't that be great? Alex, is probably easier to replace a 4th liner than Kuch. Sabrin has gotten some goals this year and seems to have played a few games for the Bolts, so familiarity maybe. So this is still about Kucherov I think is going to play tonight. So about Sabrin, they like Sabrin. He's got 1 goal though. No, he doesn't have several goals. I think he's got 1 goal for the Lightning.
Right, but I think Sabrin has given the Lightning feel that Sabrin has given them good minutes.
He's been fine.
He's a reliable. He does take some penalties sometimes.
That's
being a physical guy. Being a physical guy,
right.
he is prone to getting called for penalties and taking penalties. But his 5-on-5 play has been very solid. He knows where he's supposed to be on the ice, which sounds ridiculous when you're talking about an NHLer. Of course he knows where he's supposed to be, but he's just reliable and consistent. Like he's in the right place. He is where he is supposed to be. When they're trying to break out, when they're on the forecheck, he's a veteran guy. He knows how to play the game. He has enough NHL experience that it's not like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I'm used to playing in the minors. This is a new experience. He's had enough reps at the NHL level that being in an NHL game is not going to bother him. You know, he's basically unflappable in that regard. He provides toughness. He's willing to fight. He's a good fighter. I mean, yes, he's all offense and, you know, just looks to throw, and sometimes he gets caught with a punch from the other player, but he also lands a lot of punches, and he is fearless about fighting. So that does have an impact, having somebody like that in the lineup. The Lightning like having this guy in the lineup. There's a reason why he has been on their NHL roster, you know, basically consistently through the second half of the year, even if he has been a healthy scratch at times. And right now, against this particular team, the Lightning want to use him. Again, Jack Eye is on the other side. I don't know if that's
cool with that.
factoring in or what.
It may.
But
It may.
I think Sabrin, so he for sure played in the last meeting. I think he also played in the game in Montreal. Because I remember I talked to him after the Lightning played the Devils on that same trip. Because if I'm remembering right, the Lightning lost in Toronto, they went to Montreal and won, and then they beat the Devils, and then they lost to the Islanders at the end of that trip. And I remember talking to Sabrin after the Devils game because he fought Dylan and did quite well in that fight. So I have a feeling Sabrin also played in the first game against Montreal. I guess as I'm speculating, I can look it up. It's not that difficult. But, you know, he's played against the Canadiens, a speed team. You're like, you know, how's he going to do in terms of, you know, what they can do with their speed? And he's done just fine.
So the second part to that with Sabrin,
I'm looking him up. Yeah, he's played in both games.
You have to, when you're somebody like him, you have to be able to show the ability to play a little bit too. In other words, if he was just somebody who was going out to fight, which is why I liked him more than Douglas, to be quite honest. And we had that question before. It was great to have both of them in the lineup. And I think early on, especially in the season when you're trying to maybe go against some of these teams that can play over the line, like the Florida Panthers, having a couple of guys in the lineup, that's fine. But Sabrin, I think I agree with you. He has shown the ability to play in a limited role and not just somebody who goes out there and likes the fight guy. And especially for the Lightning, they do not like to give you a roster spot and play as one of the top 11 or 12 forwards if you're just going up and down and looking for a fight. You got to do a little bit more. Sabrin has done that. What does that mean for his future? For the Lightning, I have no idea. But for this year, he has found a role more so than at any other point in his career at the NHL level. And the one thing that stood out, he said, the coaching staff has given me confidence.
Yeah.
Giving me confidence that I belong here and that I have a role. And you can really see it. Anytime one of his teammates gets touched, he's in there. He'll do whatever he has to do to stay in the lineup. And if you don't believe me, go ask Aaron Ekblad. And
by the way, you know, this Anaheim-Toronto game last night that was played in Anaheim, it was a wild game. Toronto won 5-4 in overtime. Both teams scored late on a Anaheim power play. The Leafs scored shorthanded to go up, and then the Ducks tied it on the same power play late in the third. But this was the whole Radko Gudas retribution game for the Leafs, and I guess Gudas is actually battling an injury and said, I have to answer for my mistake. Like, I think he actually said
he did.
I have to answer for my mistake. Like, he even acknowledged that it was a mistake. And he fought Max Domi right off the opening faceoff, and I'm not sure if this was by design or not. He didn't even throw a punch. He had his right hand cocked, basically, but didn't even attempt one punch. He basically took what was coming to him, and the Leafs were targeting him. And he knew that was coming. So, you know, you talk about a player who is willing to, quote unquote, answer for a misdeed. Gudas certainly knew what was coming and accepted what was coming his way. But I wonder if some of this is also, they weren't happy that Matthews got injured. Certainly it was not a good hit. Matthews got injured, going to miss the rest of the regular season. So in the next meeting, you're like, okay, we have to respond. But I wonder if some of this is the Leafs got so much flack for not responding at the time that they're like, this is not happening again. Like they were basically called out.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and so now it's like, okay, we're going to try and do a make good on not having stood up for our captain when it actually happened.
apparently when that happened with Austin Matthews and nobody did anything, Berube, the story goes in the intermission, was just letting his guys have it. He said there should have been 4 guys going after him. And
if he were on the ice, he would have taken matters into his own hands. I'm
surprised he didn't drop the gloves and try and go out there and make something up. By the way, you always wonder, we're not in the locker rooms, you always wonder how that dynamic plays out. That's an awful look. That's an awful look for the players not to defend their captain.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody did anything. And I'm not sure that's a knock on Austin Matthews. Even if you didn't like him as a person, and I'm just an example here.
Right.
The hockey code is that you go defend a teammate, particularly against a guy like Gudas, who has a history of, shall we say, playing a little bit over the line.
Yeah.
And that's his game. He's physical, but he does go over the line. For nobody to do anything when it happened, I wonder. I'm not saying that makes the decision easier for Austin Matthews to move on from Toronto. That might be too big picture. But those are signature moments, I think, in a season. But also the way that team is constructed. Like, could you imagine if... I mean, it was funny. I was showing you clips of... There were some fights back in the day. It was when Stamkos came back here a couple of days ago.
Yeah. I had forgotten... Brayton Point got rammed into the boards against the Leafs. I'd forgotten that play.
Stamkos jumps in, and then he and Austin Matthews fought. Now, Matthews wasn't the guy who nailed Cooch, but...
It was Riley, I think.
It was
right?
Riley. And then there was moments where Stamkos... I forget who the player was. There's a pass to Kucherov coming across center ice. The guy sticks out his leg. Kucherov goes twirling. I think it was early in Kucherov's career. Stamkos goes right after the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have seen that's one of the great attributes, I think, of this Lightning team. You breathe on somebody differently or look at them differently. I mean, Cirelli, Hagel, Chernak, Lilleberg. I mean,
it
these
happened
are guys
in the Edmonton game.
In.
Cirelli went after Podkolzin. It was actually Nurse who hit Hagel in the head. But
I just couldn't. I mean, could you imagine the Lightning's best player, whoever that is?
Yeah.
And the Lightning not doing anything about it.
Right.
I mean,
But I think my point was, it almost seemed like, okay, they had the fight with Gudas at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be over, but maybe it shouldn't be over. I don't know. But it definitely was not over. Like that was not enough. That was not enough of a pound of flesh. And some of that might have just been, it wasn't enough because now they know Matthews is out for the year. But some of it might have also been, we got raked over the coals for what happened in the last meeting, and so we are going to go above and beyond here.
Yeah, I agree.
But
I mean,
Radko Gudas is a big boy. He knew it was coming, and, the teams only meet twice a year anyway.
Everybody
but we'll see if this carries over to next year.
Everybody in that building should have known what was going to happen. However, even if the Leafs fought every shift, it wasn't going to be enough.
It's not enough of a make good.
For what they didn't do. For what they did. Like, you had one chance. You're captain. And you didn't do anything. I mean, it's just staggering. Anthony says, I think the biggest problem for Bjorkstrand is the second pass he makes on the power play. Sometimes he needs to hold on to the puck. Sometimes he rims it too hard. Losing possession is crucial. But he defends.
Well, again, plus minus is what it is. He is I think he's the worst minus on the team this year. And, you got a team where you've got, like, J.J. Moser is plus 44. And, you got a lot of the forwards with huge plus numbers. So it does stand out because it's different. Now, I'm not disagreeing with Anthony that Bjorkstrand has shown the capability of defending. He has just had a bad year. I mean, some of his plus-minus struggles are tied to the fact that he's not scoring himself 5-on-5. If he had put more pucks in the net himself 5-on-5, that minus number would be smaller, and maybe it wouldn't be a minus at all. So I have seen more of Bjorkstrand since he came to the Lightning than I saw of him before he came to the Lightning. What I remember of him before he came to the Lightning, and he told me as much, when he played on the power play in Columbus and Seattle, he was either in the bumper or he was on his strong side at the right circle. At the right circle, you can have the puck on your stick. You're closed off, right? So your stick blade is closer to the boards, which means you have a harder angle to shoot, but you're less likely to like get stripped of the puck. Now you kind of can only go in one direction unless you peel back to the blue line. But what I remember from Bjorkstrand was he had the capability, and still does, of scoring from a very bad angle on his strong side. Like he's a righty shot, bottom of the right circle. He can snap it, and he'll pick the corner. He scored on Vasilevsky from that very spot. And I think some of the time he was on the power play, he was there. The other time he was in the bumper, which is usually a soft one-timer, a soft pass leading to a one-timer.
Yeah.
He's scored some goals with the Lightning from there. His spot with the Lightning is on the other side. So, he's gotten a lot of reps there this year, but throughout the bulk of his career, he's not been there. So Anthony's point is, he's trying to make a second pass. I mean, part of it is Kucherov is wiring the one-timer option. Like the puck is coming hard. It's hard to one-time it cleanly and get it where you want to get it. Not everyone can do it. That has been a struggle for him. If he stops it, gives the penalty kill time to react. And they're closing on him and taking away maybe a shooting lane. So, maybe you need to have more of a catch and release almost. Like you get it, you stop it, you snap it in one motion. But it just hasn't worked for him being in a different spot on the ice. It doesn't work consistently enough. Having said that, he's got 9 power play goals this year. So, only Radish has more on the team. But I think, you've made the point and Phil has made the point too that, based on who he's playing with, 9 is low. Like he could have had more. So, look, he's going to put in the work.
Yeah.
I feel certain of that. He's going to try and get back into the lineup. And when he does, hopefully he can make the most of it. And what you said is true. The playoffs are a fresh start. And if Oliver Bjorkstrand happens to be in a position to use that shot in a playoff game that beats a goalie clean and helps the Lightning win a game, I think a lot of this may, fade into the background, honestly. He was not able to play for the Lightning in the playoffs last year because he got hurt at the end of the regular season. So let's see how he's able to do in the playoffs this year, assuming that it's not going to transpire, as you said, where, he's going to be healthy scratched in a playoff series.
I think, and I don't...
He does have playoff experience. I mean,
I don't know what Anthony's...
This is not going to be his first time into the postseason.
I don't know what Anthony's context was about the defense part. I think Julian has confirmed that the metrics look pretty good for Bjorkstrand when they've talked about his 5-on-5 play, so I think that's in part maybe speaking to Anthony's point. I will just say this big picture. He was not brought in here for his defense. If the best thing we're saying about Oliver Bjorkstrand is that he's defending well, we're missing the big point. And that is he was supposed to come in to provide a certain level of elite offense. And that hasn't been close to being achieved. So it would be like saying Nikita Kucherov has really back-checked well this year. I'm obviously exaggerating. No, Nikita Kucherov's job is to generate offense. Anything else is great. Right. You expect 90 to 120 points, maybe more from him, and if he doesn't get that, you're probably going to look at that as a disappointing year. Just like, by the way, we've talked about Braden Point.
Mm-hmm.
Braden Point, you can give me all the metrics you want that may be in favor of what he's doing, but you know what numbers I'm going to look at, partner? First, it's the eye test. It's going to be goals, and it's going to be points. Why? Because Braden Point...
Unless something weird happens, he's going to finish under a point per game this year. Let's see. I'll give you his up-to-date numbers.
How many goals does he have this year? How about that? Is he going to
17. He's got 46 points in 55 games. And again, I'm just wondering, how long has it been since Braden Point has been under a point per game, in his other than maybe the first year or two?
Let's look it
up.
I'll
look it up right now.
Heck, yeah.
I think Steve's doing it too, which would be helpful.
Diligently looking.
All right, so his first year, I've got my long distance clock.
His first year was
40 points in
struggle.
68 games, and he
Yeah.
missed some time due to injury.
Correct.
And then his second year, 82 games, he had 66 points. So 18-19, he was over a point per game. 19-20, he was basically at a point per game. 66 games, 64 points. The 20-21 season, he was under 48. So, look, I stand corrected. 21-22, he had 58 points in 66 games. But the last 3 years,
where he's been
22-23, 23-24,
Yes.
24-25, he is, let's just say this, comfortably over a point per game. I mean, last year, 82 points in 77 games. The previous 2 years, he was in the 90s. And, of course, one of those years he scored 51 goals. So this has been a fairly significant drop-off in production for him. He's had some injury problems, but I felt that he was playing really well. He was playing his best hockey when he got hurt in Philadelphia. And then when he came back, he also was playing pretty well, honestly. It's been actually during the stretch of time more recently where the Lightning have been getting results, he's been a little quieter. I mean, he hasn't been completely quiet, but it's really been Cirelli, Hagel, Kucherov at forward as a line when they played as a line, and Gensel. Point has not produced as much. Now, sometimes if they gave out a third assist, he would get it, like he's making a pass, and then that person who gets the puck is getting the second assist on a goal. He's been out on the ice for some goals for, but I think to your point, you look to Braden Point to drive play, and I think he's hit a little bit of a lull here in the last little while. It hasn't hurt the Lightning in terms of their in terms of their record, going 6-0-2 in the last 8. But
I think you're being generous. I mean, if I were to tell you, and we're getting on Bjorkstrand a little bit, at least I am, in terms of just what he was brought in here to do. And his numbers this year are well below, I think, his career or his average in terms of goals per season. But if I were to tell you that Braden Point's last 4 years, when it comes to the goal-scoring department, is 30, 44, 44, and 40. And this year he's on pace for, 28, 51, 46, and 42, and he's on pace for, maybe 20.
Yeah, the 28, he had actually, I didn't even remember this. He had a bit of a down year in 21-22, and then he got hurt in the playoffs. But he bounced back the next year and had 51 goals.
Yeah,
By down year, I just mean that he was well under a point per game. He had 58 points in 66 games. He had 28 goals, but he's not going to get to 28 goals this year.
No, and so that's where I think for him, you give him the benefit of the doubt because he's been an elite player, an explosive player, and this is where really you want him to start clicking heading into the playoffs. Bjorkstrand, I'm not sure that's there because I think he's a different player than Point. Point can drive play. I wonder with Point, not only has he been inconsistent this year, has he become predictable in how teams are playing him? And it's one of the things that we can discuss down the road. Even we've touched on this a little bit in the post-game show, is that is Point somebody who really needs to be playing with Kucherov? Are we seeing that impact?
Mm-hmm.
Probably more so this year.
I think a lot of this is tied, though, to he has not gotten the same looks on the power play that he usually gets, and he's not scored. I mean, we just talked about Radish leads the team with 10 power play goals, and Bjorkstrand has 9.
Sure.
Usually it's Point. I mean, last year Point and Gensel were at 16 and 17 respectively, or they were both had 17 power play goals. I mean, add 10 goals to Braden Point's total right now. He had those last year that he doesn't have.
And I don't know
this
what to make of it. It could just be one of those years. And look, let's hope he has a breakout game.
But you talked about the playoffs being a fresh start.
Yeah.
Maybe there's going to be some of that for him.
Agree.
I mean, I don't think that he has played poorly. I mean, during this stretch of 6-0-2, he has pulled on the rope. He has. I just don't think that he has been as dynamic, which is a word we talk about, as we've seen him.
Yeah, there's pulling on the rope.
But he's not playing badly at all. Not at all.
There's pulling on the rope, and then there's people who pull on it more and who make more of an impact than others. I think
because of
we're
his
not
pedigree.
Seeing that.
Yes.
That's what I mean. He's usually the guy, all right, let's go. As soon as I get that rope, I'm pulling you all in. It's more
Right.
of like I'm hanging on. It's kind of that analogy. So
I mean, I will just point out, when he got hurt, he's been hurt a couple of times. When he got hurt the first time, then he came back and he was on that really good run, and then he got injured in Philadelphia. I mean, he was a double-digit minus guy. And as we speak right now, he's plus 12.
yeah,
So he has turned his season around. Like, cosmetically, it looks a lot better than it did. I'm just saying, I think in the last little bit here, a little of the edge has come off of what he is doing on the ice. And maybe it's a smidge. But I think it's been noticeable because Hagel and Cirelli really elevated when the team went out west.
no doubt.
And so there's a gap there, at least in my opinion. And Gensel has done the same.
Yes.
I mean, Eric was talking about that empty net goal that Gensel missed in the first game after the Olympics, against Toronto. And then it seemed like Gensel is usually fairly even with goals and assists. And after that empty net miss, he kind of went into a little bit of a dry spell with goals. Now he's coming into this game with goals in 4 straight games.
Yeah.
But, if I look at Gensel's breakdown, 35 and 45. So it's great that he's got the 45 assists. But when we see Jake Gensel, it's usually like 38, 41. It's usually pretty close. And I think that he never really dipped. Although I guess you could say when the Lightning weren't playing well, everybody was dipping. But as Cirelli and Hagel kind of got revved up with Kucherov on that road trip out west, Gensel did too. Gensel scored some big goals in this last little stretch here. One reason why the Lightning were able to rally from multi-goal deficits in a lot of these games, Gensel was giving them a big goal at some point. He scored that huge goal against Ottawa to kind of seal it, too.
For sure.
I mean, that was a put-away goal where, put away the opponent and put it into the win column. But, I mean, he scored goals where, one I think he scored to make a 3-1 game 3-2. Another one I think he scored to tie it. Huge goals the Lightning desperately needed. So I think he is playing at a very high level, too, right now.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Look, the Lightning are in first place. That's
right.
All of these things, we can talk. That's why we've made a push for Kucherov for as good as he's been, John Cooper as well. But I think collectively this team has something that we haven't seen the last couple of years, whatever that is, and it's been fun to watch. But before we sign off, enjoy some Reif Rum, smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bolts and enjoy responsibly. All right, so the game's tonight at 7 o'clock. We'll be on the airwaves at
7
6:30.
o'clock.
Yeah.
No more 7:30s.
Thank goodness. 6:30
Until
is
the
pregame.
playoffs, maybe. I don't know.
Right. We'll have the last call after the game tonight as well, and then partner you and I will be back at it again tomorrow, recapping this game and maybe looking ahead a little bit to Pittsburgh. But it should be hopefully a fun game to recap for us tomorrow.
Yeah. The teams have played some. I mean, the Lightning had a blowout win in the first meeting, so that wasn't too fun for Montreal. But the second game was a very, it was an entertaining game. It was.
Correct.
Just leave it at that.
All right, partner, I will catch you tonight. Great
See you
job as
tonight.
always. Thanks to Steve Ersnick and everybody who listened. We appreciate you guys. Keep those comments rolling. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.